Hello, and on the gaming table today, we're taking a look at some more Warmaster games. So recently I got together with a couple of other people and we played some regular Warmaster Revolution. Not mini Warmaster this time, just regular Warmaster. We played 2 versus 2 with 750 points each, so we weren't playing with big forces, but we were just there to have a bit of fun. We managed to get 2 games in the time we had available, so let's take a quick look. So in the first game, we had a force of Orc and Goblins combined with Chaos at the top of the screen versus Dark Elves and more Chaos at the bottom. So most of the forces were a little bit of a mix of infantry and cavalry. The Dark Elves had some bolt throwers and some flyers as well. So here you can see the forces of Chaos and the forces of Goblins that were at the top of the screen in the previous shot, and you'll see the Dark Elves and the other Chaos forces as we go along. So to start things out, the Dark Elves moved up onto a hill on the side, and the Chaos forces moved through the woods, and the cavalry redeployed into the middle where they could strike kind of in any direction. On the other side, the Goblins and the Chaos moved forward. The buildings were victory point locations, so if they could get into contact with those, they would earn some victory points along the way. In the second turn, the Dark Elves flanked around to the left, and the Chaos just sat in the woods and waited for their opposing Chaos forces on the other side to get a little bit closer. Let's see what happens next. And here the Chaos forces on the right decided to charge in. So here on the right, you can see the Chaos Knights have charged in here. The player Tom didn't realize that those infantry were actually still touching the template and were defended. However, he did still charge in there, and their other units just moved up to take control of some of the central locations. Here we can see the Chaos Knights charging in. Again, they've got a spawn there attached to them, so maybe they've got a chance. Those ogres that are standing at the front there are actually being stand-ins for Chaos Warriors, because my Chaos Warriors are not quite finished yet. And the rest of the units moving up, the Chaos Knights here ready in a position to countercharge soon. Now the Chaos Knights actually got gear-offed here and driven back a little bit, and the Chaos also put in a Boon of Chaos into the Knights unit to try and give them more attacks, so they were sending in everything into that one, including the General who joined that unit as well. Tom, the player playing the Chaos Force there, is well known for committing his General early and often, so let's see how that worked out. Unfortunately for the Chaos Knights, they got driven off by the Warriors and the Marauders in the woods there, largely due to the defended status. I think they lost by 2, and so they got driven back there, and now they're ripe for a countercharge. And in this position, as we end the turn, this is how things stand. And a countercharge is exactly what happened. The Dark Elves moved quickly over to try and take a location, put some shooting onto those Orcs and Goblins there, and also get some shooting onto the Chaos Warriors next to the building on the right. The Knights flank charged the Chaos Knights there, and the Harpies, you can see, flew all the way across and positioned themselves to try and block a retreat. And so this is the main combat that was going on here with Tom's General committed. If those Knights die, that's pretty much going to break the command and game over. And that's exactly what happened. The Chaos Knights and the Chaos Warriors managed to finish them off. The spawn got disattached from the combat after the first round, and so wasn't able to contribute in the second round. The Chaos Warriors lost 1 stand, as you can see there, but the Knights and the General fell. And so that's how things stood at the end of that game. Pretty quick. We only played like 3 turns kind of each, and that was kind of how things worked out. Now, game number 2, a little bit of a different affair. So in this one, we had both of the Chaos forces on one side of the table, and on the other side we had the Dark Elves with the Orcs and Goblins. You can see that the Dark Elf, Orc and Goblin side is a much larger force. However, the quality of Chaos would hopefully bear them out here. So in setup, this is how things looked. Again, the buildings are victory point locations. In the first turn, the Orcs and Goblins and Dark Elves moved up. Again, the Dark Elves flanking around to the left a little bit, and the Orc and Goblins suffering a little bit from command problems, and so not getting everything forward. Similarly, the Dark Elf bolt throwers managed to get a bit stranded behind the hill there as well. The Chaos forces charged up, and the infantry secured the buildings. The Knights got stuck again at the back due to failed commands. So the Dark Elves moved up with the Orcs and Goblins again, and a fairly good battle line here. The Dark Riders just behind the wood there, trying to sneak their way in and try and get some shots or generally disrupt the line. A little bit of shooting on the Chaos Warriors drove them back off the objective, however it didn't do too much to them. Now, in the Chaos turn, the Chaos Knights here managed to get around the corner of the wood and charge into the Dark Riders. Also, some infantry here moved up behind the building there just to provide some support and cover things on that side. So those Dark Riders are in a little bit of trouble now, facing off against a unit of Chaos Knights. And this is how things stood at the end of movement here. Now, the Chaos Knights made short work of the Dark Riders, and then they managed to advance forward into the Harpies on the hill. However, they didn't manage to kill them all, and you can see on the left there that they decided to fall back after taking out one stand of Harpies, not being able to pursue them any further. So in the Dark Elf turn, the Dark Elves flank charged the Knights with units of infantry, needed 2 orders to get that in, and it worked, and the Harpies went into the front. Meanwhile, the Orcs and Goblins moved forward and were trying to disrupt the lines with some magic, as well as the Dark Elves shooting at the Marauders, kind of the grey-coloured Marauders on the left behind the building there, trying to shoot them up as well. Chris had also sent his Boar Boys into the Chaos Knights in the previous photo. He charged in here, but unfortunately, even though they benefited from having a War spell, they did not manage to win the combat. They lost by 6 to 8, and so they were forced back and then were ripe for a counter-charge themselves. On the other side here, the Harpies and the Spearmen and Crossbowmen made tough work of taking out those Chaos Knights, but across a couple of rounds, they started to whittle them down. And this is how things stood at the end of that turn. The Boar Boys, they're a little bit stranded in front of the Chaos Cavalry. They're going to get counter-charged, and also they could be charged by some of those other Chaos units there. And here you can see that's what's happened. On the left, some Chaos Marauders had moved across 2 orders here and managed to take the Dark Elves in the rear, while the Chaos units here had managed to do an initiative charge and get into the Boar Boys here. Over here, the Marauders and the Chaos Knights and the Spearmen and the Crossbowmen engaged in a big fight here. The Knights fell, but so did the Spearmen and Crossbowmen a little bit, and the Chaos Forces won the fight even though they lost the Knights there. And so the Marauders following up took out the Spears, but didn't decide to go into the Crossbowmen after losing a stand themselves. Here, the Boar Boys, trapped in a wedge of cavalry and infantry, succumbed pretty quickly here. It took a little bit of time, but eventually those Boar Boys did fall and created a big hole in the line. The Knights then decided to advance into the Orcs and Goblins here. However, they got beaten off by the Orcs and Goblins. They lost primarily on the fact that the Orcs and Goblins had plenty of support there, and that's what drove those Knights off in the end. So at the end of the turn, this is how things stood. You can see the Knights there on the right, just in front of that big line of Orcs and Goblins, but otherwise Chaos is holding both of the objectives and scoring lots of victory points. Chris decided to commit everything into taking out those Chaos Knights. He put his general and a unit of Orcs in there on the right, sent another unit of Orcs and Goblins in from the front, and tried to contest objectives in the middle. Dark Elves didn't have too much luck with orders, but they set themselves up to get lots of shooting on that Chaos spawn there, just next to the edge of the woods. Did manage to confuse it by shooting it up a lot, but however were 1 wound off of killing it. The Orcs and Goblins on the right made pretty quick work of those Chaos Knights and took them all out, and this is how things stood at the end of the turn. And then some Chaos charges came back in. So here we can see a unit of Marauders has charged into those Orcs and Goblins. That unit's still containing Chris's general, so the idea is here, if the general can be killed, then that's the game. Similarly, units of Chaos Warriors and Marauders here charged into these exposed Dark Elves. Over here, the Orcs and Goblins fell pretty quickly to the combined assault of those Chaos Warriors, and with the general dead, that was the game. And so that's how things stood at the end. On the left here, those Chaos units did take out a bunch of those Dark Elves and also broke the Dark Elves based on units. That, combined with all the victory points, gave the Chaos Forces a triple victory. So I hope you found that interesting today. Just a couple of quick fights of Warmaster, a little bit of fun. Even though the forces were small and it was 2v2, we had a lot of fun playing together, and that's really the main point. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you again real soon.